Good morning, gentlemen, it's Thursday. When I think about my biggest regrets, for some reason the first thing to come to mind are my own romantic blunders. And while there are at least a few things that I somewhat regret about my past romantic life, awkwardness from taking a shot that I shouldn't have, or a mischance from not taking one that I should have, in the grand scheme of things that doesn't really matter much. I can look back and cringe at how painfully awkward and stupid I was, and am. But none of it was really important, it didn't mean much, and it doesn't have much of an effect on me today except for me cringing at how awkward I am. And most of the things that do matter that I should regret don't really come to mind when I think about what I regret. They require a lot more thoughtfulness to dig out. Now, I'm not gonna air all my dirty laundry for the whole internet to view, but there is one thing that happened a few years ago that I want to talk about, almost as a promise to myself to be better, because the same laziness and stupidity that was in 15-year-old me is still somewhat in me today, and I need to be better. So back when I was in high school, me and my sisters would attend our church's youth group. And the youth group would have a convention trip every year where you would go and you would do MTAs, or ministry training areas. Basically, you would perform a skit or a sermon or a song or something like that, and then 3 qualified people in that field would give you some advice on how to be better. The goal of all this was to help kids serve in the church now instead of waiting until they're adults. So the first year I went, the only MTA I did was apologetics, which basically just means defending the faith. And the topic was homosexuality. I believed back then that homosexuality was a sin, and if you prescribe to a literal interpretation of the Bible, you kinda have to. It's pretty clear that God's not cool with it. Now, there are other ways to interpret the Bible, and not all Christians agree that homosexuality is sin, but I'm not gonna get into that whole debate. Basically, my presentation was going through a bunch of verses in the Bible that show that God's not cool with homosexuality, and then trying to debunk some of the arguments for homosexuality. And that's where I went wrong. All the arguments that I debunked, either no one was using them in the first place, like I talked about how animals sometimes have homosexual tendencies and how it doesn't make it okay for humans to just because animals do. It's an appeal to nature fallacy. But everybody knew that. Nobody actually used that argument in defense of homosexuality before that, so I was really just wasting my time. Or if they were relevant arguments, I was just plain wrong. I tried to argue that homosexuality was purely a choice someone made, probably a choice made specifically to defy God. Because I believed back then that if someone lived in opposition to Christian values like homosexuals or atheists do, they must hate God and want to destroy Christianity. Which of course is not the case for the vast majority of non-Christians. So when I was researching this, I came across a lot of good arguments that made good cases for homosexuality not being a choice. It can be genetic, it can be related to upbringing, it can be related to abuse. There's a million different things that can influence someone's sexuality, and it's rarely, if ever, just a choice. I couldn't explain this. I couldn't make this fit with my agenda, so I went looking for an argument that could help me. I eventually found something about dominant and recessive traits, and even though I didn't fully understand the argument and its ramifications at the time, I ran with it because it was the only thing I could find that would let me be right. Instead of being honest and saying that homosexuality is purely a religious issue, I had to be 100% right. I couldn't give an inch. I knew that the evaluators wouldn't care about this, and they didn't. They gave me praise. I received praise for being ignorant, lazy, and knowingly spreading false information. That's one of my biggest regrets. I knew I didn't understand the arguments, I knew I didn't know the full story, but I didn't care. All I cared about was receiving praise from the people in my group that I looked up to. It's not that I regret believing that homosexuality was a sin. If you prescribe to a literal interpretation of the Bible, you kind of have to. But I do regret using bad information that I knew was wrong to try and prove my point, to try and win one for my tribe. The argument against homosexuality is purely a religious one. If you're not a Christian, there's no reason you should live by Christian values. America's not a theocracy. I hate how this kind of lazy ignorance still exists in my life. I don't want to find out what's right. I want to be told what to believe and just go along with that. This extends not only into my religious beliefs, but also my social and political beliefs. I hate that I try and avoid proper thinking at all costs. It would be so much easier just to not care, just to not think about religion or politics or social issues. But all of these impact the well-being of so many people in such huge ways that it would be horribly irresponsible and selfish of me just to write them off because they're hard. I'm a young idiot and I need to know my place. I can't just shoot my mouth off without knowing what I'm talking about. I need to have the facts on my side. I need to take time and improve myself. I need to get educated. I need to apply myself. I need to not give in to the laziness that comes so naturally to me. Doing what's right is very difficult sometimes, but I don't want to run from the difficult things anymore. I want to do hard things. I want to be good. Gentlemen, I'll see you soon.